Welcome to Sales to CEO. Another, what do we call these episodes? We call these YouTube videos. I don't know, but listen, another opportunity for you to grow and learn. Today we're talking about how to persuade, influence anyone, right? I know most of you are thinking to yourself, man, take notes. This could work on the spouse maybe, huh? I don't know if it works on the spouse. It may work on your clients, but I do know this. If you can focus on what I'm about to share with you, it'll help you persuade and influence anyone. But before we get into it, there's a couple of things that I want you to note. Number one is when we're talking about communicating with somebody, I need you to understand that literally out of 100% of your communication, 10% is the words you say, right? That's it. So I know I talk about a lot about how important it is for words and how important it is to understand the power of your words, and they are. But if they're not coupled with these two other things, it's not gonna go as well for you as you need to, right? So 10% is your words, 30% is your tonality, right? So I'm speaking to you and I can speak in a very monotone way and bore you to death, right? Or I can have energy and I can have some inflection in my voice and I can actually go up and go down. I can pull you in and pull you out. You can hear my zeal, my enthusiasm, right? And then the last part is 60% of what you convey is through your body language. So much like with my hands, I'm moving around. Look, I'm Italian, right? So I talk a lot with my hands. And some of you may not be naturally like that, but your whole body language, your facial expressions, are you smiling? Are you conveying and transferring that to your client? Because that's ultimately what we're trying to do when we're communicating, right? So the second thing I want you to think about before we get into the 4 things of how to persuade and influence anybody is I want you to understand about conviction, having conviction, right? So when you're communicating something, you believe it, you're convicted, you have self-confidence in that, right? So let me pause for a moment because in order to kind of create these things that I'm about to share with you, you got to have self-confidence. And I want you to think about something. If you're not confident in something, my question to you is who hurt you? What hurts you? Right? Because I truly believe to my core that what kills people's self-confidence is these traumas, these things that happen to you in our lives as you're a little guy, little girl, you grow up, whatever happens, it kills your self-confidence, the things that people say to you. So you're going to have to really wrap your head around this and understand you got to own it, take responsibility regardless of where you're at in your life. To gain the self-confidence, you got to have that to be able to convey and persuade and influence, right? You got to have conviction, right? So if you're writing this down, or you could write this down, write down E cubed with the 3, because it's an easy way to remember these 3 things. It's energy, it's enthusiasm, and it's emotion. Energy, enthusiasm, emotion. This is one of the biggest parts of raising your body language and raising your tonality is your energy levels, your enthusiasm, and your emotion. Now, when I say enthusiasm, I know a lot of people, it's hard for people to get enthusiastic and they feel kind of fake about trying to fabricate enthusiasm. Look, you can't do that. You can't draw from an empty well. If you look at the word enthusiasm, and I should put it somewhere on the video, at the ending of the word is IASM, right? Enthusiasm, right? And that stands for I am sold myself. The reason why you get enthusiastic about something is you're actually sold on it. You're excited about it. It's easy to convey excitement and enthusiasm when you believe in what you're doing. So remember E cubed. You got to remember that it's energy, it's emotion, and it's enthusiasm. And your job is to transfer that in your communication with your clients, right? Ultimately, you remember the words that you use create pictures. Pictures create emotion, and energy and action always follows thought. What do we want the client to do? What are we wanting the customer to do? We're wanting the thoughts to convey, to go down and through the process and buy our product, buy the car, do what we have to do, right? Your job as a manager, as a salesperson, as a GM, as a dealer principal is to convince and influence and persuade your client to believe that what you have will solve their problem. That's it in a nutshell. Your job is to convince, influence, and persuade the client to believe that what you have will solve their problem, right? So again, the key word is believe, right? Your job is to persuade and influence them to believe what you have, your car, your product, yourself, your dealership, your personnel, your environment, the trust they have in you will solve their problem. Now, I know I mentioned managers and GMs and dealer principals. Remember, even in a dealership, it's no different for management, right? Who as managers, who is our client? It's a sales team. It's our job to convince and influence and persuade the sales team on a daily basis that what we have here at the dealership and the direction, the vision we're going will solve their problems as sales professionals. What are their problems? Their problems are moving up in the industry. Their problems is making more income, right? So when we say problem, it's not necessarily a complete negative. It's what people are after. So there are 4 things. And as you guessed it, the very first thing I want you to do is find out what's the problem. If you're going to influence somebody, you're going to persuade somebody, you're gonna be able to share with them that what you have will solve their problem. You've got to find out what is the problem. What brought them into the dealership? What brought them into the circumstance of buying something? What's the problem? What's the deal? You've got to isolate that by good quality questions. We're extracting information. We're gathering data of the process to figure out how we can help the client do what they need to do and hopefully get into one of our automobiles. Number two, you've got to reframe through the process. You've got to reframe, because the consumer has a paradigm of what they perceive and they feel, from the process to the product, everything. And you've got to constantly reframe that, right? Because it's hard to see the picture when you're stuck in the frame. Your job is to get the consumer out of the picture, right? Get them out of that frame so they can understand more clearly the broader picture of how you can put this deal together. Number three, no fabrication. None, zero. When you're persuading, convincing, no fabrication, no fake it till you make it. Heart, body, soul, everything is into it. That's the difference between creating certainty and uncertainty. The reason why consumers don't buy when they meet you and don't buy when they get done with the process is because they're still uncertain. You have not solved the problem. You have not convinced them and influenced them or persuaded them to believe that what you have to offer will solve their dilemma while they're there. Therefore, they leave, and now you've got to follow up, and they go shop, and they do the same process to make sure you are creating that certainty. And when you have that conviction and you have that self-confidence, that's what makes a huge difference. The last thing is committed or interested. You have to be all in committed versus just sort of interested. And let me give you an example. Sometimes you go through the process and you meet and greet your client, you meet and greet one of the customers. They pull up within 3 or 4 minutes. You're trying to transition into a needs assessment. The guy says, I'm not buying today. First place I've been. I don't have my wife with me. I'm on a lunch break. Immediately, you have to ask yourself, am I committed or am I interested? You're not going to persuade and convince somebody if you're half in, right? You've got to go all in, right? You've got to go all in. So again, commitment versus interested. I'll give you a quick analogy that I've used in sales meetings all the time, but understand this for a second. Let's say we got a 15-foot fence. The top of the fence is 1 foot of barbed wire. 15-foot fence, barbed wire of 15 inches on top of the fence. And the goal is to get from one side to the other side of that fence. You got to do it in less than a minute. That's the deal. We put the clock on you, you start climbing that fence, and you're committed to get over this fence till you get to the very top, and you realize, oh gosh, barbed wire. That's, you start to try to navigate around, and all of a sudden the clock's ticking down, and then you don't make it over the fence. You come back down. So now we change the circumstance for a moment, right? Now we change the circumstance. Now we have the same drill, except this time we take a rope, we tie it behind your belt, and we put 3 or 4 big old fat steaks, and we put a couple Rottweilers and a couple pit bulls that are 20 yards behind you. Okay, you got the same exact 15-foot fence. You still got the 12 inches of barbed wire time limit. But all of a sudden you realize if you come down off there, what's waiting for you, right? So again, a quick analogy to understand, you may get over that fence a little bit quicker and may make it to the other side knowing what's left down below, right? So when the circumstances change, it doesn't mean our commitment level changes, because here's what happens in the car business. Your circumstances are going to change every day. You're going to go in with a great attitude today, and guess what? It's going to be rainy. Circumstance change. Does that mean you stop your commitment level? No, you still do what you have to do, right? Customer tells you, hey, I want to think about it. Do you just say, okay, no problem? No, the circumstances change. Now they want to think it over. They want to sleep on it. So what do? Right? So you've got to stay committed through the process. Last thing I want to note and make sure when you're talking about convincing and influencing and persuading, presentation versus the process. Right? The presentation versus the process. Look, so many times when you guys are in a situation where you're talking and communicating with your customers and you're talking about the actual focusing on the process, but you haven't taken the time to actually put a presentation together for every phase of the game. And I'm going to get into that in one of the next videos because it's important to break down. There should be a presentation for your meet and greet, an exact presentation that you have memorized and you do it forwards and backwards. There should be a presentation for the needs assessment, exactly how you do it every single time. Just like when a customer goes into the F&I office, there's a menu presentation. They do it the same way every single time, every customer. But yet as salespeople, we don't do it a lot. So I want to challenge you to do that and realize that it's the presentation as much as it is the process, and make sure that you're on board with that. Look, Louie Herron here, Sales to CEO. I want to see you at one of my boot camps. We got one coming up January 14th in Augusta, Georgia. Look, do me a favor. The fee to watch the video is real simple. It doesn't cost you anything. Subscribe, like, share. If anything else, make a comment below. Let's go back and forth. I'd love to hear what you've got to say. Again, until the next episode, this is Louie Herron with Sales to CEO.